Beneath the veneer of quiet, tree-lined streets, some secrets lie buried, waiting for a single, shattering moment to surface. A moment when tranquility gives way to unimaginable sorrow, and the lives of those involved are forever altered by the hidden currents of human emotion. Rana Township, Pennsylvania, on a spring evening in 2018, carried the kind of serenity that seemed unshakable. The suburban streets, lined with neatly trimmed lawns and handsome homes, projected an air of calm security. It was the kind of neighborhood where families felt safe leaving doors unlocked, where the idea of tragedy felt distant, even impossible. Yet, on April 23rd, that sense of comfort was destroyed in a matter of seconds. Two sharp, startling sounds pierced the air, gunshots that tore through the quiet. A concerned neighbor, alarmed by the noise, hurried toward a brick home on Lowry's Lane. Peering through the kitchen window, he froze at the grim sight inside. A woman lay motionless on the floor, her keys still gripped in her hand, as though her return home had been abruptly interrupted. The keys, still pressed into her palm, told the story of a life cut short in an instant. And within moments, investigators would uncover something even more shocking inside the house. This was no simple break-in or random act of violence. Two lives had collided in a devastating way, and the truth behind it would expose a tangled web of passion, betrayal, and heartbreak. At the center of it all was Meredith Chapman, a woman whose life embodied promise and ambition. Just 33 years old, Meredith's career and personal life were on an upward trajectory. She was admired for her energy, her optimism, and the kind of radiant smile that could fill a room. To those who knew her, she was destined for even greater success, a woman who would leave her mark wherever she went. Yet, beneath the surface, her personal world was more complicated, and it was within this hidden complexity that the seeds of tragedy had been planted. Meredith was born on January 31, 1985, in Newark, Delaware. From an early age, she was driven by a sense of purpose. She excelled academically and socially, always striving to achieve, always looking for the next challenge. After graduating from the University of Delaware, Meredith chose a career path that reflected her love of storytelling and communication. She became a television reporter, covering stories with clarity and passion. Her time in broadcasting helped sharpen her presence, her poise, and her ability to connect with people. But her ambitions reached beyond the news desk. Meredith soon returned to her alma mater, the University of Delaware, where she assumed the role of marketing director. Her efforts brought fresh energy to the school's image and student engagement. She was not just an administrator, she became a mentor, someone who guided and inspired young students. In time, she even took on lecturing, sharing her knowledge directly in the classroom. Her colleagues described her as bright, focused, and compassionate, a rare blend of intellect and empathy that left a lasting impression. Yet Meredith's ambitions didn't end there. Politics called to her, and she stepped eagerly into that world as well. With her intelligence and charm, she quickly carved out a reputation as a rising star. Her resume became a testament to her drive: television reporter, university leader educator, political communicator. To anyone looking in from the outside, she was unstoppable. But as Meredith's public profile grew, her personal life carried complexities that few could see. She was navigating the same challenges of love, relationships, and vulnerability that many encounter. Though in her case, those struggles would entangle her in something far more destructive. By 2018, Meredith had reached another turning point in her life. She had recently accepted a prestigious new position as assistant vice president at Villanova University, a move that signaled her growing influence and success. The future stretched wide open, and yet, just as her career seemed to be soaring, her personal life intersected with another's in a way that would change everything. On that April evening, when she walked into her home unaware of the danger that awaited her, Meredith could not have known that the choices made by those around her would lead to such a violent and irreversible end. The discovery of her body on the kitchen floor was only the beginning of the story. Soon, the details that emerged would reveal the presence of another woman in the house, another victim whose destiny had become fatally entwined with Meredith's. Together, their stories painted a picture not of random violence, but of emotions driven to their extremes, of love, betrayal, jealousy, and heartbreak that had escalated into tragedy. The community of Rana Township, so accustomed to its quiet order, was shaken to its core. Neighbors who had once waved to one another in comfort now looked toward Lowry's Lane with unease. The death of Meredith Chapman was more than a crime. It was a chilling reminder of how swiftly life can unravel, even in the most idyllic settings. What followed was an investigation that sought to uncover not just the events of that night, but the fragile and painful truths that had led two lives to collide so violently. For Meredith, the vibrant young woman with so much ahead of her, it was the cruel end to a journey defined by ambition, kindness, and promise. And for the world around her, it was a story of how love and betrayal can spiral into devastation, leaving silence in their wake. Her drive extended beyond academics. Meredith nurtured a passion for politics, serving as a communications and external relations manager in the House of Representatives. By the age of 32, she had even campaigned for a Senate seat in Delaware. Though she didn't win, the experience earned her recognition, landing her a place on Delaware's prestigious 40 Under 40 list of rising leaders. On social media, Meredith projected the same vitality she embodied in real life. Her posts were filled with smiles, moments of joy, and snapshots of her vibrant world. To her followers, she seemed unstoppable, possessing the career, the presence, and the determination to keep climbing. In 2009, Meredith married Luke Chapman, a local councilman, and she wholeheartedly supported his political ambitions. But as the years passed, their relationship began to change. What had once been a partnership built on shared goals became strained, and by 2017, the marriage was showing deep fissures. It was in that same year that Meredith crossed paths with a man who would alter the course of her life forever, Mark Gerardo. She met him while interviewing candidates for the role of creative director at the university. Initially, Mark hesitated. Meredith was 15 years his junior and would be his supervisor. Yet, the connection between them was undeniable. Meredith's intelligence and confidence drew Mark in. He admired her professionalism and was captivated by her charisma. Before long, the boundaries between boss and colleague began to blur. When she suggested they grab a drink one evening, he agreed without hesitation. What started as a simple outing stretched into hours of conversation, laughter, shared thoughts, and personal confessions. Mark revealed painful memories about the loss of his parents and his brother, details he had rarely shared before. Despite being married to Janiyah, his high school sweetheart from South Carolina, Mark allowed himself to grow closer to Meredith. The chemistry between them was undeniable, and soon they found themselves in a relationship that neither had planned, but both felt powerfully drawn to. As Mark Gerardo began settling into his new life in Delaware, he believed he was simply navigating the next phase of his journey. Living apart from his wife Janiyah brought a new sense of independence, yet also opened doors he never imagined would alter his life so profoundly. By early 2018, when Janiyah finally made the move to join him, the cracks in their relationship were impossible to ignore. She had known her husband for decades, knew his rhythms and moods intimately, and yet the man standing before her now seemed different, distant, withdrawn, and emotionally unreachable. A chilling thought pressed at her heart. Another woman had entered their lives. For those who knew them, Mark and Janiyah had always seemed an unlikely pairing. Where Janiyah radiated boldness, charm, and a love for adventure, Mark moved quietly through life, more reserved, more comfortable remaining in the background. But their differences didn't push them apart in the beginning. Rather, they complemented each other. Together, they found balance. From the earliest months of their relationship, the chemistry was undeniable. They fell quickly, deeply in love, with the kind of conviction that made marriage feel like the natural next step. In October of 1993, Mark and Janiyah exchanged vows, promising to spend their lives in companionship. Unlike many of their peers, they agreed early on that children would not be part of their plan. Instead, they poured their energy into one another and into the life they built together. Their years were filled with shared adventures, traveling to new places, taking long hikes, and spending quiet evenings doting on their beloved dogs. Their marriage appeared harmonious, even enviable to those on the outside, and while disagreements inevitably arose, as they do in any marriage, the couple always seemed to find a path back to each other. But time and hardship would test the foundation of their bond. When the financial crisis hit, the stability that had defined their partnership began to crumble. Both Mark and Janiyah worked in marketing, but as opportunities dwindled and money grew tight, the tension between them intensified. Their differences, once strengths, became sources of conflict. Janiyah's strong-willed, outspoken nature clashed sharply with Mark's quiet reluctance to engage in confrontation. Arguments became more frequent, the silences between them colder and longer. The situation worsened when Janiyah lost her job. For a woman defined by her independence and determination, the blow was crushing. Months of unsuccessful job searching wore down her confidence. Slowly, she sank into despair. She felt trapped by circumstances beyond her control. Her once bright outlook darkened by the weight of financial and emotional struggles. Friends and family noticed her fading spirit, though few grasped just how deeply she was suffering. Meanwhile, Mark's reserved temperament offered little comfort to his wife. Where she sought reassurance and solutions, he retreated further inward. Their communication, once a cornerstone of their relationship, grew fractured. And it was in this widening gap that vulnerability took root. Mark, for years the steady but quiet partner, began to drift emotionally, his detachment eventually leading him into another relationship. When Janiyah finally joined him in Delaware in early 2018, she immediately felt the shift. Something intangible but undeniable hung in the air between them. The ease they once shared was gone, replaced by a distance that chilled her. Mark was present in body but absent in spirit, and Janiyah, intuitive and sharp, could feel it. She suspected the truth long before it was spoken. Mark was no longer hers alone. Another woman had taken hold of his heart. The betrayal cut deeper than words could express. After decades of partnership, of sacrifices and shared dreams, Janiyah felt the life she had invested in unraveling. The cracks that began with financial strain had now split wide open, exposing wounds too deep to ignore. For Mark, the quiet man who had once found comfort in his wife's boldness, the divide between them had become unbridgeable. What had begun as a marriage built on harmony and companionship had devolved into disconnection, silence, and secrets. Their once shared adventures and devotion to one another seemed like distant memories, replaced by arguments, despair, and suspicion. For Janiyah, the devastation of discovering another woman in Mark's life was the final weight on an already heavy burden. And for Mark, the choice he had made, to step outside the marriage, set in motion consequences that neither he nor Janiyah could have foreseen. The story of Mark and Janiyah Gerardo is one of love that began with fire and conviction but was slowly eroded by hardship, silence, and betrayal. It is a reminder of how even the strongest, seeming bonds can fray under the pressures of life, and how the quiet choices made in secrecy can alter destinies forever. Years later, when the couple moved from South Carolina to Delaware, the distance between them was no longer just emotional. Mark had already started a new chapter in his career, accepting a position at the University of Delaware. But when Janiyah joined him in January 2018, she noticed a change. Mark seemed detached, distracted, a stranger in their own marriage. Suspicion took root. Mark often spoke of his new boss, Meredith Chapman, an ambitious, charismatic woman who was not only younger, but also admired by many. Though Janiyah confronted her husband, asking if there was more between them, Mark denied it, insisting it was nothing more than a professional relationship. On the surface, Janiyah accepted his word, but inside, doubt gnawed at her. Unable to shake her instincts, she hired a company to monitor his phone, gaining access to his texts, calls, and photos. She even managed to record private conversations between Mark and Meredith, confirming her worst fears. On Valentine's Day 2018, Janiyah revealed to Mark that she knew the truth. This time he could not deny it. He admitted everything. His growing closeness with Meredith had indeed deepened into love. For Janiyah, the confession was devastating. She had believed her husband was going through a midlife crisis, perhaps seeking temporary excitement. The reality that he wanted a future with someone else was crushing. Mark suggested they try couples therapy, though his intentions were far from hers. Janiyah wanted desperately to save the marriage. Mark, however, was using the sessions to confirm it was over. By the third meeting, he had made up his mind. He told her that once he secured his permanent residency in Delaware, scheduled for May, he would file for divorce. Meanwhile, Meredith was making changes in her own life. She ended her 9-year marriage to Councilman Luke Chapman. Their separation was amicable, both admitting their relationship had run its course. With that chapter closing, Meredith looked ahead to a new beginning. When the University of Delaware discovered Meredith Chapman's relationship with her colleague, Mark Gerardo, it was clear to both of them that their careers at the institution had reached their limit. Rumors had begun to circulate, and the professional environment became increasingly uncomfortable. Quietly and deliberately, They began searching for new opportunities, determined to leave the past behind and build a future together elsewhere. By April of 2018, Meredith had secured a prestigious new role at Villanova University as the Assistant Vice President for Marketing and Creative Services. It was a position that reflected both her ambition and her talent, and she embraced it with enthusiasm. Excited to begin fresh, she moved first, renting a home in Ronner Township, Pennsylvania, a picturesque suburb outside of Philadelphia. The neighborhood was everything she had hoped for: quiet, safe, and affluent. A place where she could start over and perhaps build the life she envisioned with Mark. He planned to join her soon, once the final loose ends in Delaware were tied up. For Meredith, the move represented a step into a brighter, more promising chapter. But while Meredith looked forward, back in Delaware, Mark's wife, Janiyah Gerardo, was spiraling. She had uprooted her life to follow her husband north, leaving behind familiar places and long-standing connections. Instead of building a new beginning, she found herself stranded, alone, jobless, and betrayed. Far from friends and family, she felt her stability unravel. The revelation of Mark's affair with Meredith struck her at her core, shaking the very foundation of the marriage she had believed in for decades. Yet even amid the heartbreak, Janiyah clung desperately to hope. She convinced herself that there was still a chance Mark might reconsider, that perhaps he would turn away from Meredith and return to the marriage they had built. To preserve that hope, she reluctantly agreed to sign the divorce papers, but only under one painful condition: that Mark continue living with her and spending time together until May. She insisted on shared dinners, daily walks, and moments of closeness. To outsiders, it might have seemed irrational, but for Janiyah, it was a desperate attempt to hold on to what was slipping through her fingers. Still, suspicion gnawed at her constantly. The betrayal had cut so deeply that trust was impossible to rebuild. She began monitoring Mark's phone, reading messages, and even recording conversations. Each discovery of contact between him and Meredith deepened the wound, fueling her anger and despair. When Mark discovered a recording device hidden in his jacket, the fragile tension between them exploded. What followed was a furious confrontation. The argument escalated quickly. Voices raised, accusations hurled. In the chaos, furniture was damaged, a physical manifestation of the emotional destruction already consuming them. Mark, usually quiet and reserved, unleashed his frustration, while Janiyah, desperate and unraveling, poured out her heartbreak. At the height of the confrontation, she uttered words that revealed just how fragile she had become, hints of self-destructive despair that left Mark shaken. For the first time, he truly saw the depth of her suffering. Beneath her anger and suspicion was profound hopelessness, a woman broken by betrayal and loss. Alarmed, Mark urged her to seek professional help. To his surprise, she agreed. Janiyah visited a psychiatrist, a step that seemed to offer a glimmer of relief. For Mark, it signaled that she might finally be beginning to accept the reality of their situation, that the marriage was ending, that he was moving on, and that she needed help to cope with it. But beneath the surface, the situation was far from resolved. To Mark, Janiyah's visit to the psychiatrist was a sign of progress. It was another act of desperation, a way to soothe the storm inside her, while she wrestled with the unbearable thought of losing the man she had loved since their youth. Her agreement to counseling did not mean she was ready to let go. If anything, her obsession with holding on to Mark only deepened. While Meredith settled into her new home in Pennsylvania, excited about her career at Villanova and the prospect of a fresh start, Janiyah's life unraveled further. Her sense of betrayal and loneliness grew sharper with each passing day. The fragile arrangement, Mark's continued presence under her conditions, was like pouring salt into a wound. Every shared dinner, every walk, was a reminder that he was there physically but not emotionally. This volatile triangle, Meredith looking ahead with hope, Mark torn between two lives, and Janiyah consumed by despair, was building toward an inevitable collision. For all three, the choices made in these weeks would alter their lives forever. The unraveling of the Gerardo marriage was not just the story of infidelity, but of emotional collapse, desperation, and denial. While one woman dreamed of a new beginning, and one man tried to bridge the chasm between past and future, another woman's heartbreak and unraveling mental state would prove far more dangerous than anyone realized. Then came April 23, 2018. That morning, Meredith shared a photo on Instagram, beaming in front of Villanova University. Her caption celebrated the new beginning she was so eager to embrace. That evening, Mark was scheduled to meet Janiyah for dinner to discuss their divorce. He arrived at the restaurant first. Then came a message from his wife. She was running late. Minutes later, another text. She wouldn't be coming at all and told him to head home. What followed was even more unsettling. A photo lit up Mark's phone, garbage scattered across the ground, a discarded item among the refuse. He instantly recognized the location. It was Meredith's trash. More messages appeared. Janiyah wrote that he had destroyed her life and that she hoped he would never find happiness again. The final words she sent were chilling a goodbye. Panic set in. Mark rushed to Meredith's home, convinced his wife had gone there. Through a window, he witnessed a devastating sight. Meredith lay motionless on the kitchen floor. A profound stillness indicated her life had ended. Staggering inside, he confirmed his deepest fears. As he turned, he noticed another form, clad entirely in black, in the living room. In that terrible moment, the gravity of the scene became chillingly clear. It was Janiyah. At first, investigators grappled with the grim tableau. With two lives tragically ended and no obvious instrument of harm, they initially considered the possibility of a third party. However, a crucial discovery was made as officers attended to Janiyah's forms. A firearm lay concealed beneath her. It had been discharged twice. What unfolded in that quiet Pennsylvania town was a story of ambition, betrayal, and heartbreak. A love triangle that culminated in a devastating dual loss. After the devastating discovery inside Meredith Chapman's Rana home, police brought Mark Gerardo in for questioning. Shaken and grief-stricken, he told investigators everything he knew. He handed over his phone, showing the string of messages Janiyah had sent him while he sat waiting at the restaurant. Messages that began with excuses about being late and ended with a chilling farewell. Piece by piece, detectives reconstructed the day of April 23, 2018. Surveillance cameras placed Janiyah in Rana by early afternoon. At 10:20 p.m., she was captured stopping at a nearby gas station. Later, she parked a rented vehicle close to Meredith's house, an SUV she had quietly reserved 10 days earlier. From there, she sifted through Meredith's trash and slipped inside the home, concealing herself as she waited for her husband's new partner to return. Sometime between 5 and 7:00 p.m., Meredith came back from her first day at Villanova University. She never even made it past the kitchen. Investigators believe Janiyah confronted Meredith the moment she stepped through the door, initiating a single fatal action before bringing about her own demise. The texts Janiyah had sent Mark now read like a tragic confession. In addition to the goodbye, she told him that he had destroyed her life and wished him nothing but misery. As detectives searched the scene, more details emerged. In the rental car, they discovered items like binoculars, ammunition, gloves, and earplugs, a collection suggesting meticulous foresight. A neighbor later confirmed seeing a woman lurking outside Meredith's home days before, watching the property through binoculars. The discoveries inside the Gerardo's own home painted an even darker picture. Hidden within the lining of Mark's jackets were tiny listening devices, carefully sewn in place by Janiyah. Police uncovered 12 notebooks filled with her handwritten transcripts of the conversations she had secretly recorded. They also found a separate bank account used solely to purchase surveillance equipment, lockpicking tools, spyware for computers, and GPS trackers she attached to both her husband's car and Meredith's vehicle. Tellingly, she had nicknamed the device on Mark's car Lying Jerk, while Meredith's tracker carried a far more vicious label. Evidence revealed that weeks before the tragic event, Janiyah had acquired the weapon used. She engaged in target practice multiple times, even visiting a local range just hours prior to that fateful evening. Among her belongings, Mark discovered a letter she had written in the weeks leading up to that day. In it, Janiyah reflected on her life as a wife and partner, admitting that she once found deep fulfillment in caring for her family. But her words took a darker turn. She wrote that Mark and Meredith could not be allowed to get away with what they had done, that she was owed respect, and that she needed to take control. Investigators later learned that Janiyah had even turned to neighbors for help. On the Nextdoor app, she asked for recommendations, first for a divorce attorney and later for a marriage counselor. To the outside world, she appeared to be searching for a way forward. Her psychiatrist later confirmed that she showed no alarming signs during their sessions, even speaking about starting over and leaving Delaware behind. Yet beneath the surface, she was living with deep pain and had been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder brought on by her husband's betrayal and the looming divorce. By the end of the investigation, one truth was undeniable. Janaya's actions were not impulsive. They were deliberate, meticulously orchestrated, and ultimately catastrophic. A voiceover continues from previous segment, maintaining a reflective, somewhat somber but informative tone. In the quiet corners of her mind, Janaya had been grappling with deep emotional struggles for years. After the sorrowful culmination of events, specialists who reviewed her history later suggested she may have exhibited traits of a personality disorder, an illness often characterized by intense emotional shifts and internal instability. To those around her, Janaya seemed to be navigating these challenges with a quiet strength. Even Mark believed she was beginning to find a path forward, perhaps even accepting the idea of an impending separation. Yet, beneath that composed exterior, Janaya's profound pain and deep-seated feelings of betrayal were slowly, tragically, intensifying. In the years that followed, Mark grappled with an immense burden of regret. He openly shares his recurring thoughts, wondering if a different course of action